So now let's talk about the MoonDream setup and requirements. Now, it is important to understand, this is for Silicon Dojo. Silicon Dojo, our default language is Python, so we are going to focus on using Python with MoonDream. There are other languages that you can use, but we're not going to go there. There is an API, right? So the thing that I find most interesting about MoonDream is that you can run this locally, but they do have their API service. It gives you a substantial number of requests per day, and you can use that. So doing the API is slightly different. You don't need as much hardware and that type of thing. That's just one of those things to keep in mind. As far as hardware is concerned, again, I have run MoonDream off of a 2012 MacBook Pro, 4 gigs of RAM, and it works. It works fine. Again, it's a little slow, but it does work on this, and it should be able to work on a Raspberry Pi. I would say give it at least 4 gigs of RAM, but hey, you get to play around and see what will work for you. So now let's talk about MoonDream setup and requirements, right? So there is an API for MoonDream, so they have their own cloud service, so you can just send your request up to their cloud service, they'll give you a response. They give you quite a few responses per day, absolutely free, so if you want to do their API service, you can do that. We are going to be running everything locally in these classes, just because that's how we roll around here. Again, one of the things to think about is with MoonDream, you can use other programming languages other than Python. We use Python because that is our default standard, and so everything here is going to be in Python. When you're dealing with MoonDream, you are going to have to download the model that you're going to be using with the Python module. Again, there's two models, and they have two versions of compression. There's the 2B version and the 0.5B versions of the models, and they have the int4 or the int8 versions. So we are going to be using 2B int8. So this is the largest, again, it's about 2 gigs in size. It is the largest and the best quality model, so it is most likely going to give you right, the output that hopefully you're looking for. When you go down to int4 and then to 0.5 and int8 and int4, those will become smaller and smaller models. What that means is you need fewer resources in order to run those models, but the quality of the output is going to get progressively worse, so you are going to have to test to try to figure out which model works for you within your particular situation. As far as hardware is concerned, basically you can run a MoonDream off of a potato. Again, 2012 MacBook Pro, 4 gigs of RAM, old Intel Duo processor, so dual core processor, and MoonDream works pretty well on here, although it is relatively slow. Again, you can use a Raspberry Pi. I would argue get one with like 4 gigs of RAM, but you can use Raspberry Pi in order to run MoonDream, and it should be fine. The weird issue that you do get into with MoonDream, though, is again, I have this, $3,000, $3,500 MacBook Pro, and MoonDream runs on it. Again, 2B int8 runs fine on it, but it is surprisingly slow. Again, I don't know if that's simply because of the CPU. I don't know if that'll get sped up once they release the GPU component. I don't know if it's because the MacBook Pro just doesn't like MoonDream or something like that. But one thing to consider when you're playing around with MoonDream is it's very easy to think, okay, well, I'll do testing on a crappy old computer, verify everything works, and then I'll go buy a $10,000 machine with all the bells and whistles, and then that will be just amazing. And one of the things, again, depending on the different products, is sometimes buying significantly expensive hardware doesn't actually improve the performance the way that you think it will. So do be careful with the testing and going out and buying any kind of hardware from MoonDream. You might not get the performance gain you're expecting. So now when we look at Python setup, it's pretty easy. So you're going to install the MoonDream module. So Python 3 --m pip install MoonDream. That will install MoonDream into your environment, and that's what you need. The other module that you need, though, too, is Pillow. So Pillow is a module that allows you to interact with images. It's pretty cool for when you need to manipulate images in the Python world, and so you are going to need that Pillow module installed too. Again, Python 3 -m, pip install pillow, and those are the two modules that you're going to need. The other thing that I'll tell you is that if you are going to use the API, I would recommend that you use a virtual environment, VENV. So VENV basically, it allows you to create kind of a siloed, containerized environment for your Python script to run in. When I did not use a VENV and I tried to use the API, I kept getting an SSL security failure. So the secure socket layer security failure for encryption. Went through, took a lot of different things, tried a lot of different steps to get through that SSL issue. Basically, none of it worked. I just figured, let me try a virtual environment. I tried the virtual environment, worked like a champ. So I honestly do not know why, but if you're trying to use the API and you run into SSL issues, use a virtual environment, and that might be the thing to fix your problem. So now let's take a look at the MoonDream AI models, right? So you got the basic information here. One of the things that I'll say is, so when you download the models, you're going to have to put the model into your working directory. So whatever the working directory is, if you open up a workspace in VS Code, basically wherever that workspace is, if you don't do that, it's going to generally be in the root user folder for your particular account. So basically when you download this, Python is going to have to be able to read it. So it's going to have to be in wherever your working directory is. The other thing is when you download the models, right, so I've been doing a lot of tests, I've been playing around, I've been clicking on a lot of different links to get different things. So sometimes when you click on a link, you're going to get the model and it's going to end in .mf, right? Other times I've clicked on other links and it ends in .mf, .gz. I think this is for compression. So it's the same model. It's the same model. It's just sometimes when you download the model, you get mf at the end. Sometimes you get mf.gz. The only reason that this is important is when you basically are pointing to the file in your Python script, you're simply going to have to make sure you're pointing it to the right file. And again, an issue that you might run into is maybe on one computer, you downloaded the model and it had .gz at the end, so that's what you've been doing. You go to another computer, you find a different link, so you download .mf, and now all of a sudden your script is failing because you don't have .gz version, you have .mf version. It's a whole hoopla. So again, basically, just make sure that the extension at the end in your script matches whatever you have in your working directory. So if you click on the specifications link that I have, it'll take you here to the technical specifications page. You can come here, you can take a look at the models. So 2B and 0.5B, it'll tell you the size, a whole bunch of different things here. It'll say best for production APIs, cloud deployment, high throughput services. I question what high means in this particular instance. But anyways, they say high throughput services, right? We come down here, so that is the int8 model for 2B, int4 model, memory constraints, local development, testing environments. You'll see this uses 2 gigs of RAM at runtime. This uses 2.5 gigs of RAM at runtime. If you go to the 0.5 model, you'll see the int8 requires 8 gigs of RAM at runtime, Raspberry Pi 4, edge devices, local development. If we go down to the int4 model, mobile devices, IoT embedded, and that uses about 800 megs of RAM. So again, that's one of those things you need to be thinking about. How much RAM do you need to run not just the models, but everything else that's required for your stack for whatever it is that you're creating. Here is the link for you to download. I don't know if you can see it there, but again, when you download from this link, it's going to do .mf, .gz, and that's what you're going to download. So you can just copy that and basically download it, and it'll work fine for you. You can copy this into Safari or your web browser, and it will download it for you. But you do get that .gz at the end. If you download other places, you'll just get the .mf. Right. When you come down here, it'll give you some information about benchmarks. You can pretend you understand, how well this thing actually works. And then the interesting thing down here is it also says feature support. So this may change going into the future. So visual question and answer, both of them do. Captioning, both of them do. Detection, both of them do. Pointing. Only the 2B model does pointing, so I'll show you how that works. The 0.5B model doesn't do that, so that's just one of the things to consider. If you click on the GitHub link, it will bring you to the GitHub account, for MoonDream. You can go through here. Again, it will give you some additional information, some about, some precision. You can download from here. Again, I think when you download from here, this is where you get the .mf version instead of the .gz version. It'll give you a basic script that you can run once you've installed everything, and it basically just gives you some additional information. So that's the basic concept around setting up MoonDream for your particular environment. The big thing is, do make sure you install Pillow. The more I look through their documentation, I'm not actually sure they tell you have to install Pillow. So if you don't have Pillow installed, do make sure you install it and then download your models into your working directory and you should be good to go.